October meeting to order this time. And we have first thing on the agenda, we do have a quorum as indicated. Approval of meeting minutes.
Do we need four motions or one motion for all?
However you wish to do it.
I move to approve the minutes of September 11 LAMTD, the 2019 budget on September 11, the September 18 budget, and the September 18 route public hearing.
Second.
For motion second for all those various minutes to be approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. We move right along. Public comments. Anyone from the public this morning that wish to speak?
Just waiting for my letter to be in the paper.
Might be a long way.
Or maybe wait. Yeah.
It's taken, quite a few days.
I'm from Ms. Mary. I'm sure that you keep behind them, they make it in there for you.
I'm going.
All right. Anything else you'd like to share?
No, just everything I hope is gonna be better,
Sure. I think
longer hours. That sounds good.
yeah. Well, thank you for those comments, Ms. Mary, and as always. All right, moving on to finance, Mr. Prasad.
Yes, Mr. Prasad in Miami doing some continuing education.
Oh, okay.
And so we have Ms. Rhonda Carter, who you have met before.
Rhonda.
Ms. Rhonda Carter is our controller, a very talented individual, been with us for a number of years and came to us from the food service and hospitality financial background. So we're excited to have her.
This is our financial upgrade.
This is our
All right, Ms. Rhonda, as you present, please, on the LAMTD financial first, please.
The financials cover a period of August 31st, 2019. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Revenue for LAMTD is $9,141,914, which is 93% of the budget. Farebox revenue is $579,000, which is 94% of the year-to-date budget. Avalon taxes are $4.7 million, and grants are lagging for FTA for the fourth quarter. Expenses for LAMTD is $8,325,544. Salaries and benefits cover 64% of the year-to-date budget. Fuel is $474,392, which is under budget. And materials and supplies are $560,468, which is also under budget.
Questions about that? LAMTD financials.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, if I may just draw your attention to the expenses, please note that we are significantly under budget
Yes.
in salaries and wages. However, there are 3 pay period expenses in September, so that will be adjusted. However, I will be talking under Executive Director comments about the tightening job market and some of the challenges we're having finding bus drivers.
Okay. What service, man?
The fuel expenses that are 474 year to date then are under budget. What is the budget on fuel? How much under are we?
The budget on fuel is $552,704.
Okay, so 35.
We budget at the national average. However, as you know, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, we receive 0.001% above the OPUS rack rate,
Right.
thanks to the consortium. I believe Miss Lisa Harris may be here today. She can talk a little bit about that consortium if she's here.
She's not here.
But she's not. Oh, sorry, Todd.
Yeah, we're part of that consortium.
Right. Great. Wonderful. Helps.
Okay, any more questions about that? Move right along.
Okay, moving along to Polk County.
Mm-hmm.
For August 2019, we received all the funding for the county. Everything is pretty much in line. Revenue is $5.37 million. The FTA grant is lagging only because we're still drawing down funds for the fourth quarter. Expenses are $5.96 million. The only outlier is the Lynx contract. Any questions?
Oh, you outlined, you said the Lynx contract we
The
have?
Lynx contract, yes,
Okay.
but we normally get most of that money back through grant reimbursements.
And we adjusted, as you know, in this current fiscal year, we are no longer contracting with Lynx. We are contracting with our own contractor who happens to be called Transitions.
Right.
So we have transitioned to a lower rate than we were paying for Lynx.
Any questions about that?
Wonderful.
Move right along to the last one, financials.
Financials for transportation disadvantage. Year-to-date revenue is $238,040. Everything is pretty much in line with the budget. This is the second period for transportation disadvantage because their year is from July to August. Expenses are $182,309, which is 73% of the budget, and everything is pretty much in line. Any questions?
Is that, we're just saying what salaries and wages are lagging as well? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have a question. Are these transportation disadvantage dollars in the county's numbers as well? So this is a breakout from,
The county pays 10% of the grant for transportation disadvantage.
okay,
Do you want to Fund 1, Fund 5, and Fund 6 more?
Fund 1 is for the district. Fund 6 is for the county, which, you know, is the money that they give us to run that program. And transportation disadvantage is for Fund 6, which is basically doing rides, door-to-door service.
So Fund 1 is Lakeland Area Mass Transit District. Fund 5 is all of the county services with the exception of transportation disadvantage, which is Fund 6, Mr. Mayor. And that's a 90-10 range.
And if you go back and look at the county financials, you'll see the 10% match for the grant for transportation
I
disadvantage.
see it. Yep. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, madam. And we're moving on to legal, the Darby's.
Yes, sir. Good morning. We have two items today. The first is a tradition. Every year, we send out the executive director performance evaluation to each board member so that they can evaluate Tom's performance, give ratings and comments. That's kind of scary. So it would be very preferable to receive these within a week before next month's meeting so that we can have them average the scores and then present again.
They have not been
Sometimes,
sent yet, though.
sir,
No,
We have not received those yet.
I have them printed right here. No, I was letting you
Okay.
know, and we can email them, but I printed them as well so that if
Email.
someone would prefer a printed copy, then there it is. So that's really just for information. So
Yeah.
now you know, and it's a month, but I will email you
Wait,
the Word copy of this
yeah,
so that you can,
yeah.
but I just wanted you to see it because in the past we've had preferences both ways. So,
sure.
so that's it on that. And unless there are any questions.
Any questions about the evaluation?
One other comment, this is the form that's been used for years, and obviously if you all think there needs to be another question or item added, certainly you can suggest that, but this is the one we've used for
Same
a
form.
number of years. Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask if anybody had a question about the layout format. Any
Gotcha.
questions?
Done?
All right.
Okay. The next, and we have dealt with this issue before, the additional lands for the Riverstone project.
Mhm.
The property description that was shared with us and provided when you approved it the first time was incorrect. So it was Mr. Davis's preference that you approve this resolution again. I provided it to Mr. Phillips early this morning, so you do not have that in your packet, nor should you, because I didn't hear back from the city until this morning.
So the hand copy that says the added language is not right or just right?
It's, the resolution's going to be the same.
Mhm.
The exhibit is going to be slightly different, but it's a property description, so it's, I mean,
Okay.
Chuck Barnby from the city is here, Mr. Chairman, and it was,
Okay, 'cause my question, I guess, is because we see in our hard copy, saying that there was added language. So added language is what we're looking at correcting,
Yes, sir. The
making the correction with,
description,
right?
the legal description of the
Right.
lot will be
Right.
accurate when it's
Okay.
transmitted to the city. When the initial package was transmitted from Rennie Heath to the district and the city, the initial description, lot description was not accurate.
Okay.
That was not discovered until it had been approved by the LAMTD board after. So the new
Right.
description, Palmer Davis had a strong preference that you just reapprove the annexation petition with the proper lot description.
So moved.
Now we have to go back to the city?
Yes.
That is my understanding.
Yes, I know we approved
Yes, sir.
we approved the stuff just the other day.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And first reading, Mr. Chair, first reading was this past Monday.
right,
Second reading and our application is on the 21st.
okay,
And so,
Gotcha.
Davis is completely
Gotcha.
communicated strategy.
gotcha, okay. All righty, we haven't needed approval for that.
There's a motion, but no second.
Second.
All right, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
All righty, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if we go back to 4A, just for purposes of the written record and looking at that agenda item, we actually want to change that to October 1st, 2018, because the period of time to evaluate between October 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2019 doesn't exist. And
Yes, sir. These are copies from last year as far as.
no, on the
Come on,
actual
the actual-
agenda.
It's on the actual?
Agenda.
Okay.
That would be James's fault.
That's true.
Oh,
I'm not, you're looking for fault. I just wanted to be right in the record.
Okay, I am, for the record.
okay, thank you for the corrections. And number 5, purchase of replacement support vehicles. Ms. Cheney?
Yes, sir. The agenda item that you have before you is to be proactive and replace vehicles that are approximately 11 years old. It doesn't mean we'll immediately dispose of the older vehicles. We're going to attempt to run them out some more before we get rid of them. There's also a lead time in getting new vehicles in. So it's just a proactive measure that it's time to replace those vehicles and time to move forward. Any questions?
Do you send them out to a auction house and one together or onesie, or how do you dispose of them?
Disposal is handled by procurement because I deal in purchasing items. I separate myself. So I believe what they do is they post it at an auction. And Todd, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, we use public surplus as an auction house, and once they reach their useful lives, we put them on public auction, relative if anybody can bid on them, I think the best value we can.
Is that on consignment to an auction house or statewide?
No, actually, we have an agreement with public surplus to do the auctioning.
Okay.
And you
And
get
that's
the, you get the
individual.
best offer.
Yes. we get
Okay.
this all.
They do that at one time.
Okay, all righty, approval item of the
Move staff
Yes.
recommendation.
A second.
proper motion and second. Any additional questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, and move on to 6A.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to,
Update.
yes, give the updates, of which I have many. Very exciting time in the district history. The first is I'd like to congratulate the board of directors and all of the staff. You see the beautiful bowl that's on the table today.
Mhm.
Alliance for Independence honored us as one of their community partner champions at their annual dinner, which was sponsored by Highland Homes. A very nice event, and we were recognized for partnering with Alliance for Independence due to the board's decision to enter into the community insurance partnership.
Great.
The executive director commented that they are saving approximately $50,000 a year by partnering with us on our insurance.
Yeah.
And to put that in perspective, their executive director had shared that they went for 3 full months this last fiscal year without air conditioning because they did not have the ability to replace the air conditioning. Their building is over, I believe, 70 years old with no major improvements. So $50,000 truly makes a major difference to this organization. So thank you all for the hard work that you've done. And James was nice enough to build us a shelf for our awards. So
Yeah.
we'll put that up on the shelf. And
Nice.
thank you, gentlemen,
It's
for.
already undersized.
Well, there's 4 corners.
Every corner have one, yeah.
So very exciting about that. As for East Polk County, we can start there. We had the opportunity to attend the Polk Vision Mayor's Roundtable, of which two of you were in attendance at the dais. And I'm happy to say that the Citrus Connection was recognized multiple times for partnering with the community and bringing the community together, as was the county, for their water cooperative and the leadership role in funding 2 new routes on the Ridge. The transition that took place on October 1st and October 7th has gone well. Lynx is no longer operating in Polk County. Our new service provider, Transitions, is now providing public transportation under the Citrus Connection banner with Citrus Connection branded vehicles.
The same route.
With the same routes. The first route is the 603. And this was the one that was probably the highest profile, gentlemen. As you know, the 603 is what was the neighbor link service. It was the second most popular neighbor link in the Lynx network. It is now the most popular circulator in Polk County. And this service is the Polk side of Point Siena. That's going very well. I talked with Keith Latham, who is, I call the unofficial mayor of Point Siena, or thinks himself the unofficial mayor of Point Siena. He has ridden the service. He finds it cleaner, more efficient. These buses have Wi-Fi and automated vehicle tracking. So the first day, as you can imagine, first 2 days, Mr. Chairman, there was some confusion. Folks were calling Lynx to try to book their trips. Lynx were the consummate professionals, handing them to the Transitions phone number. Transitions is handling those bookings for us. That was part of the RFP, thanks to Todd and his group. So they're handling those bookings and it's going very well. This was the most high profile service that we transitioned over. The 16X is the Point Siena to Haines City route that was formerly operated by Lynx. I'm happy to announce that earlier this week, Davenport did make the decision to come into the public transportation family through the fair share agreements. So they'll be paying their full 20% starting in January is when we'll make the route change. So the 16X will service Point Siena, Haines City, and now include Davenport. So we're very excited about that. The 17X is the new service that is funded by the Polk County Board of County Commissioners, operated by Citrus Connection drivers and staff. And this is the express route that runs up and down the Ridge. We have some photos for you, or should have some photos for you. Very excited. Lake Hamilton actually held their own ribbon cutting and stretched a ribbon across the street from the fire station as the vice mayor was coming down the road on the bus. So it was very exciting. We will have.
I really enjoyed that initiative.
It was very neat. We will have a formal ribbon cutting for that's being scheduled. Dundee asked to host the mayors of the Ridge and the county commission and the LAMTD board because they're very excited about what's been going on in transit. So that we're trying to get all of your schedules together. The 18X is the Four Corner service that was provided by Lynx. That's going well. And then the 19 is the Laufman Flex. That's the other new route that the county commission is funding this year. Laufman Flex, as with any new route, is slow to catch on. So we are working with Mayanne Nelson at the county, and she recently informed us of the mail house that the county uses to do targeted mailings. So we're going to look at some of the pricing of that and see if we can locate the addresses, the residential addresses in the Laufman area, and possibly do a postcard targeted mailer to those homes so that they know that the Laufman Flex is there. Turning to West Polk, Reroute 2020. I can't believe you're here. Aaron Dunn has done just a phenomenal job with him and his team in Reroute 2020. Avail is currently on site this week. I heard from someone that the terminal board just went down, but it was up, displaying all of the accurate information. So we'll get the terminal boards back up. We have teams at the terminal. Yesterday, there were 6 staff members helping people find out where they need to go on what buses. And the supervisors and all hands on deck, including myself, have been giving folks rides in our administrative vehicles if they've had challenges this first week, if they've missed their connections and those sorts of things.
How far are we off track getting all the posted signs?
What you see here, running government like a business, yes, Mr. Chairman, you can see this is what's left. What is in this room is what's left to get out on the road. So I believe we talked to our facilities maintenance team. The old 45, which is now the yellow line, will be done by the end of this week. Many of the signs that are in here. So I anticipate, Mr. Chairman, by the end of next week, everything in this room will be out. The
So
one
all the different locations.
we'll have in Lakeland, we'll have the reroute signs that are here. This is an example of the sign just to show you.
Mhm.
And again, one of the most exciting features that's the hardest to push at the terminal, which is where we are, is in addition to I really like the new look of the sign, but it's the text, your bus stop.
Mhm.
So this is an example because the system that Mr. Dunn designed, as you know, for the first time we have clockwise and counterclockwise routes. So here's our national text number. Here's the number that you text on that side of the street. But they came up with the idea that it also, because you're going to need that bus stop on the other side of the street when you come back.
Mhm.
If there's a sign across the street, this is the number that you text for that as well. So
Nice.
we're pushing that very heavily, and that's something that the customers are excited about.
Who made the signs?
I believe Mr. Walters designed the signs for us.
It's a large unit source.
And out of Fort Myers. We went with the lowest responsible bidder. They were out of Fort Myers. We did have some challenges, Mr. Mayor, and within Sunshine Law, I texted each of you individually to update you. They have been a little bit slow, so we've been picking up the signs and bringing them up here, but they will be out on time. And the one issue that we missed as the district was the overall system-wide map, Mr. Chairman. We forgot to order.
Right.
So those are currently being produced. That's the spaghetti monster. We still have to have a couple of those out there. So those will be here shortly. We're heavily pushing the mobile application, My Stop Mobile. That's free. I was personally surprised, Mr. Dunn, I don't know about you, Mr. Canarian, but I was personally surprised at how many people were already using it. They're starting to look at their phones at the terminal rather than looking for our terminal coordinators. But we're pushing that very heavily because the overall system guide, which costs us approximately $1 each to produce, we'll start handing out next week. My recommendation to you gentlemen would be that this be the last consolidated route guide that we provide for free. The system has grown. It is literally doubled in size with the county contract and now the 2 additional county routes. And we have folks like Davenport who are making decisions on the fly within budgetary means. And so every time we have to print that, we have to change it. Tallahassee charges for their system guide. You actually can't even see it. It's just in there. So I think that after this batch, we may need to discuss, and it will be an unpopular decision, but we may need to start charging what it costs or maybe a small cost plus markup for those to have them. Because again, we have the app. The app is free. The consolidated route guide can be in the palm of your hand. But these route guides are the simple route, the large route guide is, I think, getting pretty unruly.
Yes, sir.
I would agree with that 100%. What drives people to make decisions is cost. And if you don't have the cost on there and they have the capability to use a phone free, they'll do it. If they don't have the capability, that cost will represent something they protect. So I think it's just a responsible use of resource.
Thank you, Mr.
Has there been any conversation, maybe it's on your list, consequences of Fort Meade's decision yet? Is it too early?
Meetings with Bartow are being scheduled to discuss having the other routes stay within Bartow.
I thought we discussed a little bit of that before.
Fort Meade went down by 50%, Mr. Chairman,
I know Bartow was supposed to be.
which now provides additional service opportunities for Bartow.
Right.
So we're working with the Bartow city manager and the commission to sit down and discuss what those runs may look like.
I was more concerned about the lack of service in Fort Meade.
In Fort Meade.
Has that not been?
It's a great problem.
It has not involved us.
Yes.
Yet. So New Beginnings High School started up just as that transition was being made. They're making do. There were multiple people who showed up at the Fort Meade City Commission asking them to not make this change, but they made the change anyway. So to my knowledge, we have not gotten any calls at the Citrus Connection. I believe that's been targeted towards the City Commission.
And New Beginnings is making do, you say?
New Beginnings is making do.
Okay.
To the best of our knowledge, they have to be able to utilize the system. They have very few buses.
Right.
Fort Meade High School is still using the Colts program, and the system as it was remained the same. There was some discussion about changing left and rights, but we kept the service the same. ePurse, Mr. Mealy's request. Mr. Mealy couldn't be here today, but ePurse, which is a function of our current smart card technology, has been turned on. Avail's on site today, so I'll be discussing ePurse with them. And we'll be using Mr. Mealy as a pilot for ePurse. Although I believe this particular product will be unpopular, it is free of charge. And what it does is it allows a user to preload a determined amount of money. So for example, $50, put that on their smart card and then have it deducted over time. And the system would recognize based on your usage patterns, whether a daily pass is your best use, a weekly pass or a monthly pass is your best use. Typically, our riders are only giving us the money that they need to give us, but there may be a market for this. And again, it's free. Mr. Mealy's asked for it. And so it's something that we're going to pilot.
Excuse me. Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
You use the word unpopular, less utilized is
Thank you.
really
Yes,
what you mean,
Yes,
correct?
sir. That is correct.
Because the utility of it will be popular for somebody who wants to do
That's correct. Yes,
it
sir.
differently than loading tolls or something.
Yes, sir. The phone application with Masabi will be ready to launch the first week in November.
Good.
And again, that will be a standalone product that will not integrate with Avail. And that will allow an individual to load their debit or credit card and purchase a daily, weekly, monthly, or single pass from their smartphone, in addition to the credit card processing fee associated with that transaction. And in the contract that we signed with Masaba, it is free for the district. We will not pay, the customer will pay the credit card processing fees, and the credit card processing fees will show up as Citrus Connection on their bill when they see that credit card processing fee. So we're excited about the rollout of that. The biggest issues with Reroute 2020 are just catching people who, despite our best efforts, much like when recycling changed or any other change, just didn't know.
Yeah.
The purple line, which goes from Layton to Winter Haven, has a later run of the bus. So you can now get between the two biggest cities in Polk County at 7 o'clock at night. There's a bus that leaves 7 o'clock at Lakeland and I believe 7:05 at Winter Haven.
Both locations, 7 o'clock.
And they get back to 8 o'clock respectively. Huge win. But as we know, everything became at a cost to do this budgetarily neutral. So we have I believe an 8:45 or an 8:30 run of the bus.
So essentially, the bus that was trimmed out was a 10:15 bus. Just like all the Lakeland inner city routes are, there's only one bus during that time of the day to lag for later on. When you do that with two buses crossing, you eliminate it, it caused the gap from 8:45 until 11:45. However, there was no connecting buses in Lakeland to support that anyway. This is the thinking. Plus, if you went down to one bus, you run one bus one direction and it would both of them in the same place. So we're looking at a plan to reincorporate that middle run in between 8:45 and it would be a 10:15.
But I would imagine as a LAMTD commissioner, and we've alerted Winter Haven City Commission as well, that's probably I would expect the calls that you would get regarding reroute. It's the folks who are showing up in that late morning expecting to be able to get to Winter Haven and they can't. But again, 87% of our riders are transit dependent. So we're reaching them quickly, and Mr. Dunn's looking at a possible plan to be able to alleviate that. The ribbon cutting has been rescheduled for Reroute 2020 for the 16th at 8 a.m. at the Lakeland Terminal. We've invited city staff. Obviously, we've invited the county staff and City of Lakeland staff and nonprofit and partner organizations to participate as well. It is a tight labor market. We're at an all-time low in unemployment and CDLs are gold. And so our organization is doing the best that we can to retain and recruit top quality talent. However, we are down 10 drivers right now, and that does not include workers' comp, which adds a few more. And so I want to thank our human resources team. They are doing the best they can to bring in quality candidates, but it is very difficult right now for us to find drivers. The GM strike is affecting us. We were supposed to have 6 buses on the line being constructed right now. Those are the smaller buses, and we're going to have 2 that hit the line in October. The others will be hitting the line later. So just wanted to keep you apprised of that. The Wi-Fi demo is going well, the free Wi-Fi demo with Avail. July usage was 1.33. I didn't write it down. Is it gigabytes? Thank you. August was 8.27 megabytes, and September was 13.13 megabytes. So Dave's marketing efforts are paying off. We'll report formally on that to you in the future. Commissioner Lindsay sent me an article about Mulberry and an article that ran in the Mulberry Free Press about the need for public transportation and how important it is to Mulberry. And so I thought this might be a good opportunity to discuss with the board. As a reminder, they did vote to join the district in the early 90s. However, by referendum. That was the Mulberry, Bradley, Pierce area. The voters overwhelmingly voted to come into the district. And the Mulberry City Commission at the time famously said that their residents did not know what they were voting for and failed to enact the enabling ordinance. Bradley, yes, Bradley and Pierce enacted the ordinance.
That's why we have
the 3233, which is the Bradley flex.
That was evidenced by who was in office.
The interesting thing is if you pull the property appraiser's website and the tax collector's website, mysteriously, the 3 bus stops that we service Mulberry in are in the district. Just the bus stop pole. I've never seen anything like it. And no one can tell us why that is. So I had a conversation with Commissioner Lindsay beforehand. I think that it may be time with the success of Davenport, with the things that Mayor Hatch had heard at the Mayor's Roundtable, that it's time to go down and talk with the city manager and possibly with your support, talk about a first step of maybe applying a fair share style agreement to Mulberry, where we get them to pay 20% of what they should be paying, kind of work on that relationship like we have with the other cities and municipalities, and then possibly at some future time address either enacting the ordinance or what that might look like. I'm sure there would be legal challenges due to the amount of time, but we did receive a opinion from the state and from the county, and I believe Mr. Darby looked into it as well, that it is allowed under Florida state statute that they could enact that enabling legislation at any time. So they could do it.
There's no expiration on the approval.
No, sir. This goes way back. David Cardwell and I actually discussed that. David's deceased now, but are the stops, Tom, that you referred to in the city limits of Mulberry?
They are.
Okay. What happened was there was a referendum that included an area, a portion of which was the city limits and a portion of which was outside the city limits. The referendum passed, as Tom said, but in order for the area in the city limits to be in the district, the commission in Mulberry had to approve it. That's what didn't happen. So, and as far as what really matters is that the property appraiser will put it on the roll. When the Mulberry City Commission passes an ordinance, then it should be on the tax roll. I've talked to Marcia Fox about that from time to time. It's been a while, but.
Well, so rather than going with the first option of the 80-20, because you know where the 80 is going to come from. You know, it should be on them. And I think you have an enlightened administration than there was in the prior years, and you have an enlightened board.
Yeah, I think the board is more enlightened.
Yes. So I would think that board needs the historical perspective as to how it came to be. Do the math on what the consequences are, and give them the opportunity to revisit.
Okay. I think that discussion needs to be had. Yeah,
Absolutely. We'll get that discussion started. The Polk County TPO is going through their TMA, their federal certification. Mr. Wetzel is there currently, so the TPO is a public partner of the Citrus Connection. And in order to receive federal funding, they need to show the federal government that they work well with public transportation. So leaving that meeting this meeting to go to that meeting. And then as a reminder, we began our new fiscal year, October 1st, in addition to all the other changes. So we applied the 3rd year of the collective bargaining agreement with the TWU 525. This will be the last year of that agreement. Mr. Shively will begin negotiations with the union steward in the April or May timeframe so that we have something to you late summer for possible ratification. We have a good relationship with them. Again, this last union agreement created the first step increases in district history. And so we took the 2.25% salary increases that the board has typically approved, and we put the 3 years of the 2.25 into a lump pool to create the step increases. That meant that approximately 80% of the 3 years salary increases went to creating the steps.
And they bring them in line to
Correct.
the
Our
comparable.
drivers are in the median right now within
Okay.
the state. So prior to the last agreement, Mr.
Mhm.
Chairman, whether you had worked at the district for a day or 20 years, you earned the same amount of money. The philosophy when I got here was that a rising tide lifted all boats and we would move everyone up. There were outliers because for a number of years during the dark times of the district, there were raises that were handed out. Sometimes they were handed out equilaterally, sometimes they were not. So you did have some outliers. But in that first year, we created the step increases. So for the last 2 years, the increases for the drivers have not been at the 2.25%. They have been less than it. However, they have been aware that they ratified a 3-year agreement, and the majority of the large increases they saw were in that first year.
How many steps?
Barbara, we cap out at 19.
Years of service, is that correct?
How many steps in that?
There's 20.
20 steps.
There's 20 steps. There's training, year 1, and then a step every year thereafter.
When you bring drivers in, do you have to bring them in at a certain step, or do you have formulas?
They start at the bottom.
Well, now that we've been in the program for more than a year, can step 2 now be the bottom?
I would anticipate.
that would be the direction that the TWU would want to go. Yes, sir.
I knew what they know too.
We're covering it at 15, that magical $15 an hour.
Go ahead.
The delicate balance is recognizing you have bargaining unit. At the same time, you have non-bargaining unit issues that have to be.
Market needs.
Yes, yes.
And
Basically it.
when you begin to see voids or disparities in classification, you can't just cherry pick. It has to be a system-wide review, I guess, that something you start looking at that, perhaps in our retreat later to address that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I also think where experience exists, we should have prerogatives to skip steps.
Yeah.
You know, where it's justifiable for some criterion that you utilize that keeps it pretty amiable, or
In
keeps
the
it
private
fair.
sector, that works fine.
Right.
Union environment,
I understand that.
I know, but
We have the same issue with LPD, but we do some differences based on experience levels. And so we can, as long as we have a justifiable program to make equity in the hiring process, that we're not leaning into some kind of, just preferential treatment that somebody wants to exercise without discretion. It allows us to hire, we need to hire at the level that they have the experience. And we want to bring in somebody who has been driving for several years, then we would want to think about how we apply that. So I just think that can be part of your conversations as well for that purpose.
Absolutely. And Mr. Commissioner Lindsay, obviously, as you know, we've always been very cognizant of trying to treat the bargaining and non-bargaining unit team members as equal as equal as possible. So the major differences revolve around ASE certifications for the mechanics, CDL reimbursement for partial CDL reimbursement for the drivers. The admin employees have the ability to sell back 1 week, 5 days of vacation time anytime during the year. The driver of the union has the last payroll in August is when we process all of theirs. jury pay, some of those things, but we do try to keep parity absolutely as much as possible.
Sure, best you can.
And the fiscal year, the payroll for the fiscal year fell, so there was 1 day in the old payroll year and the rest in the new payroll year, so we're applying the new pay rates to the entire payroll period. And I will obviously add that to our retreat dialogue that we have.
Sure.
Union typically attends the retreat, so they may be able to provide some insight as well. And I will communicate that with Dr. Ross, because I know that's coming up.
You know, he moved. California.
What?
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry.
Yes. So there may be a transition.
Recently?
I know his daughter recently, they purchased their first home in San Francisco, so he may. Well, we will find a facilitator.
Well, he indicated, you know, a willingness to continue. So, but that's,
He sold his house for in Madrid.
Oh,
So the proof is in the pudding.
so
we can put him on the Greyhound or the Megabus. He can transfer to his local service and we can pick him up from there. Excellent. Mr. Chairman, that is the end of my comments. Yes, sir.
I saw some drops in ridership, and the reason why, especially with Central Florida Healthcare, and I thought, especially when you say it's in July or August, couple hundred rides and drop. Central Florida Healthcare,
200 there.
yeah, about 200 there, and I thought even though LGDA is small, I saw a drop there even.
Mr. Chairman, I will research those 2 drops and get back to you with an email copying each of the board members pursuant to the Sunshine Law and find out what's happening there. The LDDA, again, is a unique agreement, and the individuals with WIC cards can show on Saturdays only and ride to be able to get fresh fruits and vegetables because they're able to use their WIC benefits to turn in for fresh fruits and vegetables. I will find out with Central Florida Healthcare. Marsha Andreessen's here today, and I want to thank her very much for the work that she's done with the county and Central Florida Healthcare to make sure that they can continue to buy daily, weekly, and monthly passes through the 1 cent for indigent healthcare. So it's been a fantastic partnership, but I will find out.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
One more editing thing on that UAP ridership total sheet is Southeastern's one word.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we got to do the approval of the write-off of the aging.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize, and I should have caught this last month, but we only wrote off 3 months of Elder Point's total debt. And so in discussing with Mr. Prasad and with the auditors, although I believe the intent of the board was to write off the entire amount, everyone felt more comfortable. So we're seeking your approval to write off the 4th quarter of last fiscal year's debt for Elder Point Ministries, which is $4,572.
move staff recommendation.
Second.
Probably most for second, all in favor?
Aye.
That is the end of my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Oh, I apologize, sir. The most important thing of the day. We have Front Runner that's here today. This is a bus and a bus company. It is a newer bus. Mr. Cheney's been extremely impressed after the board adjourns. It is in bus bay 1, which is the closest bay here. This is a bus, or the style of bus that we would like to use for the Dixieland Road diamond.
You called it a what, a bus?
It's called the Front Runner.
But the second, a Euro bus, what did you say? After that front runner.
It's one of I've never seen anything.
Wait,
Like
there are 4 in the fleet for that, or 2?
there are 2 buses.
yes, 2 buses.
Currently, there is 1 bus that runs the route. The mayor and I are working with Mr. Delgado to have a second bus on the route, beginning with the Dixieland Road. The application, Mr. Chairman, that we submitted to the Florida Department of Transportation, if you remember, was for 2 vehicles, 1 to run on the route, 1 that was a spare. And that's what we were able to do solely as the district. So we applied for those grants. We'd like to see a second bus on the Dixieland Road Shuttle.
This vehicle is the single bus using for that purpose.
This is the vehicle I'd like you to take a look at.
To be used. That would be the one.
Because we need to order shortly. It is, again, this is a extremely high profile project
Right.
for the city of Lakeland and the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District.
Let me add just a little bit of fuel to Tom's fire. Earlier he had mentioned that we're having a problem and a delay with the Abarth buses that are on order. The board approved the Abarth buses. It was somewhere in the first quarter of this year, back in February, March, somewhere in that time frame, and they're due to be built in later October. That's been delayed due to GM strike. Now, we ordered 6. They're only going to build 2 before Christmas. The other 4 will be built sometime after that. Going back to the September board meeting, we asked for approval to buy 6 more, in addition to the ones that were being purchased earlier on in the year. So it's a total of 12.
Right.
Okay, so if I'm having difficulty getting the first 6, okay, I don't think it's looking real good for the other. And I don't have an approval to use the New York DOT contract yet. There's been a delay there as well. This bus here might provide another option. This bus here has a good look. And the gentleman that's out there, I've known him for about 10 years. And one of the things he mentioned is that they measured the MPG performance. They drove it from Daytona to Orlando to here, and it got somewhere in the vicinity of about 16 miles per gallon. Okay, which is pretty good. Gasoline.
Gasoline.
It's running with it's got a Dodge engine configuration. It is probably somewhere in the vicinity of 2,000 to 3,000 pounds less in weight. The operation for providing handicap access is not mechanical or electrical. It is something that are operated deployed. And there's a woman out there that demonstrated it this morning, and she's doing it with one hand. Okay, so I think that in the cost, okay, the cost right now for what we're paying for the Abarth buses, this is like probably about $70,000 less.
So
That's pretty good.
is this,
Does it look like a golf cart?
Let me see this bus.
So
are you moving toward substituting 12 of these versus the 12 of the?
I'm committed for 6.
You got 6 of them.
Okay, I have an option to.
There's a commitment that request in guaranteed delivery. Has that been violated?
No, because I haven't got the New York DOT approval yet to actually use the contract. The first step was to come to you. You approved it. Go to New York. Okay, have them approve it. Go to purchasing and issue the PO. I got stuck at the New York DOT. You can use my contract.
So we don't have a contract for either 12
So I
of
don't
them?
have a contract for
The last
For the last 6?
Last 6.
Well,
We can change.
All right, so the last 6, I understand. That's in limbo and you got.
Right, but the first 6.
For 60
Right,
bucks.
the last 4 of the first 6, was there a guaranteed delivery date as a condition of that that's now been violated that we can get out of?
That I need to explore.
Yeah, you need to explore that.
It's a good question. Hadn't thought that far ahead yet. I'm thinking more in terms of what I'm gonna do with this 6.
Right.
And you're exactly right, because there are terms and conditions in the contract that we're using with New York DOT. So I think that does exist. I just find it.
We'll get
Those 4.
we'll get an answer to that.
So you get out of the last 4 and get
And get
cheaper,
10.
faster.
You got your 10 there.
So I'm excited that
What's the downside with this?
I haven't found that yet. Okay.
The operative word is yet.
Well, let me tell you what I was shooting for, and I don't think I haven't hit the mark on this. When we talk about the road diet and some of the roads in downtown Lakeland, the standard bus is 102 inches wide. Okay, and I was looking for something that was narrower, because oftentimes we have accidents where mirrors are contacted from our vehicle to an opposing vehicle going the other direction. So if I can get narrower and take up less space, then maybe I'll have less frequency of accidents. I don't know that this vehicle is going to accomplish that, but I think this vehicle probably has multiple purposes in that it could serve as a fixed route vehicle, downsized. It can serve as a paratransit, okay? It has multiple purposes, and I think when you look at the ease of access and the overall aesthetics, okay, I will tell you that there's a woman outside, and she wants to talk about how the bus was built, and she's got a rubber mallet out there. And she's inviting everybody to beat the side of the bus because it's purpose-built and extremely durable, and you won't mark it.
What is the seating capacity in this versus the ones that are
Difference of 2 seats.
really
Oh,
Wow.
minimal?
minimal good, and cost,
It
cost effective.
Yeah. It's got a footprint of, is different by 4 feet, but the accommodation for seated passengers is only a difference of 2.
Let's go see it.
Okay.
Yeah, mine.
Mhm.
Are we through?
Yes, you will need to adjourn though.
Yeah,
Are we done?
Second.
all right, probably motion is second to adjourn. Thank you for the meeting this morning. Let's go look at the bus. All in favor?